Good afternoon, everyone. Wow, that was so loud. It's weird here. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for an afternoon of poetry. So welcome to Echoes of Now, Poets of the Present Moment. I will be your host. My name is Diannely Antigua. I am the former Poet Laureate of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and the author of 2 poetry collections, Ugly Music and Good Monster. And I currently teach in the MFA program at UNH. So Echoes of Now, Poets of the Present Moment is a reading that calls us to pause, to listen, and to immerse ourselves in the rich, layered voices of the here and now. Today we gather not just to hear poetry, but to experience the collective art of witnessing, the rhythms of our time captured in the work of 3 extraordinary poets, Iver, Cate Marvin, and Nathan McClain. Each of these poets brings a unique lens through which they examine the complexities of the present moment. From the intimate and personal to the political and universal, their words pulse with the urgency, uncertainty, and beauty of our shared existence. Iver's writing navigates the intersections of identity, memory, and the spaces between, offering a poignant reflection on both individual and collective histories. Cate Marvin's work embraces the grit and grace of modern life, illuminating the contradictions we live with every day and the resilience that emerges from them. And Nathan McClain's poetry carries the weight of place, history, and belonging, inviting us to explore how we are shaped by and in turn that shapes the world around us. Today we listen to these voices. We are invited to consider the deep currents of our present, the echoing moments that pass through us and shape us and remain with us long after their words are spoken. So each reader will read for 15 minutes, and the last 15 minutes I'll have them come up front and I'll ask them a few questions, and if there are any audience questions, they can answer them then as well. Our first reader is Iver. I'll say a few things about Kay, and then I will read their intro. Iver also grew up in church just like I did. And I really admire the way that they're able to weave religious imagery so seamlessly into their poetry. And we both have been accused of being way too nice. Iver was born in Mississippi. Their debut collection, short film starring my beloved's Red Bronco, won the 2022 Ballard Zapper Prize for Poetry from Milkweed Editions, selected by Taimba Jess. Short film won the Wisconsin Literary Award, was a finalist for the LA Times Book Award, the Kate Tufts Discovery Award, and the Lambda Literary Awards. It was named the Best Book of 2023 by the New York Public Library. Iver has received fellowships from the Wisconsin Institute for Creative Writing, the Sewanee Writers Conference, and the Helene Wurlitzer Foundation. They have a PhD in poetry from Florida State University. Please help me in welcoming Iver.
Good to be here with you all. I finally got a watch so I don't have to look at my phone. I'm excited for all of us. For Missy, who never got his new name, I hear the stars are sentient, which gives me hope for the nitrogen feeding your grass. Even more for the mole ending the day's burrow in your skull. I'm told your atoms are still atoms. Somewhere you're sitting by a pool, picking apart the physics of swimming. In the hallway of a large high school in Mississippi, you're again the sophomore guarding my classroom entrance with a letter like an undiscovered prince. I've resumed my surprise at desire I thought was for cave dwellers. This is where I go wrong. I loved a body you didn't. My younger self wants the word to rebuild rather than stop at the blonde hair, middle part, low ponytail, the impressive manliness with which her hips carried utility denim. I tell my young self to flatten her memory's landscape. Picture 2 scarves liberating a torso. A first name doesn't hiss. Soon, a Brooklyn apartment. We pretend it finally happened for you. It really did. So I met Missy in 1996 when I was 14 and he was 15, which seemed a lot older at the time. And I knew him for about 11 years. He died in 2007, July 4th, when he was 26 and I was 25. And this book has a lot of elegies about him and also fantasies of what it would have been like if we inhabited a different landscape than the one we grew up in. Any Depeche Mode fans? He was like a cozy crowd, but it's a chance. But okay, this poem is about having come of age, like all the poems are about having come of age in Mississippi as queer, and wishing I were a club kid in New York in the 90s. This is called Boombox Ode. Enjoy the silence. The landline lets me dance with you. My one deck and your two deck are dialed to 98.5 FM without an echo. If we speak aloud this miracle of fiber wire and radio wave, harmony could split. From our speakers, soft synth, a bass line, a choir reverbing, a guitar riff that rises and falls, asks and answers. I can't see your movement, the bedroom you're quiet in. Somewhere, bodies like ours are pulsing under the same pink neon to the same words like violence break. Torsos like ours are touching and strangers watch only because they're gorgeous. Let me pretend you're back in my bedroom before my mother found us. You've risen from the pine floor and pulled me up. You want me to stand for this. Let me pretend all I've ever wanted, all I've ever needed is here. Tell me that'll be us, soon. This one's called Anti-Elegy, and it appears as if it were a river map. So, river. So it's just gutted by a river and grief. Anti-Elegy. If you were here, the Mississippi would still run south, would still drop its griefs into the Gulf, where our friends would still swim in summer. Water would touch us like water. If you were here, the river that is your body would not move magically. While it emptied from the bladder's headwaters, from tear ducts and pores, public officials would still turn the fact of your body into arguments. You might have struck the impossible, surgery, a new name, and your own boat, and someone beautiful to name it after. Someone beautiful and their baby. From one dorm room landline to another, your wish list sounded like a fairy tale, like growing a merman's fin between classes. I thought we were playing pretend when you said, "Good night, Tinkerbell," and I said the boy's name you wanted secret. Even then, strangers spoke to a boy when speaking to you. That was 20 years ago. The list already a plan, already gliding an undercurrent from 20 years before that. If you were here, still drinking cold tea in a cold diner, men in state capitol conference rooms, hours down the highway, would still draft bathroom laws for adults. Your mother would still sneak taffeta and silk in your closet of fatigues and say she loved you. I wouldn't imagine your capillaries reassembling. If you were still dying like the rest of us, I wouldn't tell a young ghost how far we've come, as if I believed how far we've come was enough. Wouldn't worry about who else gets more than 27 years. Your body wasn't a national average. You wanted more than safety. But I didn't wake, sore in the jaw, until I heard the numbers. Until a nation, an entire nation, had no alibi. Missy, my grief is righteous and problematic. It floods the last four walls holding you and begs for time. It hurls absurd reasons from a future. A handful of trans film stars, humanizing a handful of trans characters. Better doctors. My grief says it's helping, but argues only for me. The relief, the microsecond of relief, when I achieve the unexpected and hope you find out. This means I forget you're gone. This makes my grief a loose dam. Still, I talk to water that unrivered your body for dirt. I float fantasies of dirt that holds us up longer. I say to the water, if you were here, you'd be here. All right, since it's Easter time, getting close. Yeah, this year my birthday falls the day after, and I wrote this when my birthday fell the day of Easter. And his birthday is 3 days after mine. So it's a bittersweet time for me, grateful for my survival, and wish he could turn 44 this year. Gospel for Missy during our 3-day birthday season, April 21st through 24th, 2018. I rise on Easter to my 37th. Here, he has risen and resent his attention. Each morning I peel the linen from my face without an angel's announcement. Somewhere, not far, you keep jumping from a mountain. Once you talked me from the same smooth edge. Now I eat olive and fish, stay active by hiking the foothills. On weekends, I float the fever's heaviness in a heavier sea. This, Missy, is not survival. When I ask the villagers why survive, they look down at the boats. Once, you and I spoke our own gospel like mad messiahs. The neighbors kept whispering, you are not a prince. We said that's the way of all heroes. In 3 days, on your 38th, I'll visit the valley of your bones. Tempt the Lord by reminding him these bones are very dry. When I say, Son of man, can these bones live? Your ankles will not be rattled, will not sprout cartilage, will not be blessed. Meanwhile, not far, Lazarus keeps wandering from his tomb. Every night he gets a parade. I can hear their lutes from my bedroom. A song about who gets miracles. Okay, I'll just read one more. This is about a trick if you're in grief and you're a little tired of it. It's like, I call it a reverse pregnancy, like grabbing joy for two. Like when you experience joy, just like get it in there extra, you know, because this person can't be around to experience what you're experiencing. One way to get in there. Because you can't, I stand in front of paintings a long time and think about the bones once belonging to you and how Egon Schella could line a body into movement. Because you no longer have a shape, I've made a practice of nearness. A hawk lets me stroke her mid-flight. I let comments land in my mouth when they're small enough. My lover pushes all their weight on me because I asked. They flatten me into astonishment. Because nothing can astonish you, I tempt what's alive by doubting I could love it more. It's a neat trick. When I use it, raccoons visit often. their fingers closed around mud older than you. Missy, this is me moving on. There's a noon rain to get caught in, and many clavicles to behold. I wish you could see this one, tilting across a century. Thank you.
Absolutely gorgeous. Thank you, Kay. That line, they flattened me into astonishment. Absolutely gorgeous. Thank you. Our next reader is Cate Marvin. We recently drove 2.5 hours to Quinnipiac University in Connecticut together, and it was probably one of my favorite car rides that I've had in a very long time. We had a lot of heart-to-hearts, we talked a lot of shit, and it was really, really lovely. Cate Marvin teaches poetry writing in the Stone Coast MFA program at the University of Southern Maine and is professor of English at the College of Staten Island, City University of New York. A former Guggenheim Fellow and Whiting Award recipient, she lives in Scarborough, Maine. Event Horizon, her 4th collection, appeared from Copper Canyon Press in 2022. So please help me in welcoming Cate Marvin.
Hey everyone, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for inviting all of us. It was an amazing reading. And so I'm going to start with a couple of poems. Do I sound okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. A couple of poems from my 3rd book because, and they're elegies as well. So I have a bunch of high school poems in my 3rd book, and I'm going to read the first one that came to me. I was actually on a trip to, believe it or not, China. My school paid for me to go with a bunch of other academics to China for about 3 weeks. And I was in a high school, and I went to use the bathroom. There was something about being, it might have been a junior high, I turned it into a high school, but there was something about being in this high school where I was like, oh my God, everyone is forced to endure this horror. All over the world. So I hated high school so much, I never wanted to write about it, that I had all these, all these high school poems. So this is the first one I thought of, and it's called High School in Suzhou, which is where we were. They play ping pong. They are all boys. They play ping pong ceaselessly in the vast gymnasium, will not stop the glance as visitors from the west, will not untie their eyes from the tiny ball. The principal of the school, salamandered slick hair, is displeased the visiting professors are female, leads us out from the gymnasium with silent loathing to a mentholated room, inside which a hazed plexiglass cage contains a stiff leopard, so frankly dead its fur looks as if it will fall off from the stroke of our glance. Is that hissing sound something that I'm doing? Do you hear it? Okay, so we're all okay with it. Okay. I have to pee. In the girls' room, I squat where thousands of girls have squatted, the rich minerals wafting up from the toilet's well. Imagine how all of our urine moves through the mysterious pipes below, leaves the high school, depositing itself into the river that days later I'll move along with a throng of idiots, joined to crawl this country as fleas do a dog. We visit one scholar's garden after another. Here's the garden of the master of nets. The rocks are bones of the earth. The furniture is referred to as internal organs. Gardens are traditionally entered through a narrow passage. Scholars were not girls. Girls are not scholars, though girls are gardens entered through a narrow passage. The girls at the textile factory we tour do not look up. The guide snorts. We have no conception how lucky they are to have attained these jobs. It's only natural they wear masks to protect their lungs. In high school, I was the master of endless failures, thrashed nightly in bed, on the verge of coughing my lungs out in that garden of spitting up. And didn't every girl have her garden? The garden of jutting neck bones, gardens pocked with black eyes, the garden of letting him in despite many protests. A dead leopard relentlessly sheds its fur above an auditorium of children hurtling toward adulthood. In that gymnasium, there were no girls playing ping pong. They are all boys ceaselessly. So this other poem, I normally, I actually don't really read this poem very often because it definitely is it requires a trigger warning. And, but I too had a friend from high school who I discovered, we had a falling out after high school, and we never talked again. But in 2005, I learned through some friends who decided they had heard about this and it was time to tell me, that she had committed suicide on 9/11. And so I wrote a poem, and at the time when I wrote it, I wrote it kind of innocently, and someone was like, you need another one. Well, she's the dead girl. She comes into all these poems, right? As a dead girl. And someone was like, you need to do another poem about her. And so I wrote this poem, and then after I looked at it, I was like, I can't believe I normalized this my entire life. So it's called Dead Girl Gangbang. Though I can't remember your last name now, Howie, I've been penciling myself in to your way back then, way back when, in your gangbang land, she was loose and gone, struggling up on a limb to raise herself off from your bed, but lost, fell back, let the all of you in again. Said just trying to get out of your room was no use since you got her own self in. Curbside mind, I venture you are still alive. Wondering what she'd think of that, but then, I don't know, can a ghost think when its body shot itself in the head? Hell, just thinking about it makes me wish I were dead. Just some girl, then you letting your friends shove their cold selves up into her. Just some person I knew. Her mother's now offering a 20% discount for crystal healing therapy on her website. In high school, she was a calm mother, dull job as telephone operator. Back in that town, her dead daughter and I always swore we would leave. Back in that town, dead to me. And me, I'm a young man who mocks me for crying. Wee, 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 he calls out, snickering in the gloom. Yet still, I wear the dead girl's perfume. I've got an accident to report. Because it was all our centers, uninvited, you rocked up inside, then bade your friends park their reeking selves in the garage of her feminine. What did you call it back then? You balding fuck, you forgot. Sloppy seconds. Forgot her slippage, her eyes dead drunk spirals, face some fluid spilling down your sheets. I've been where she's been, and I can be where you are now. Switch my hips, sashay into your office, to see you any day now, wearing her perfume. What pack animal would you choose to be in your next life? Every day, the marsupial clouds grow hungrier for our reunion, the reunion I've been packing for all of my life. There is a swing set and a girl in a dress who doesn't know about this next. First, she's pretty. Finally, she's done for. So I took some pills to forget I knew you last as friend. Then I learned the ways of your wiles, how you did my girl, who's now dead, in. So we're going to go a bit lighter in tone. I don't normally do this, but what the heck. So I'm going to read a poem called It's a Limousine. So this is like about having little kids who ask a lot of questions. It's a limousine. My kid asked me what it was, right? It is nothing like a shark, but the monochrome blanched off-white of its long body is dumb like a shark's nose and dead eyes, and it is turning a corner. There's always a child in awe who asks, what is that? And we must supply the information, however embarrassing our world may be in the explanation. For example, this dumb automobile that will make me one day explain prom, which made me personally throw up in a parking lot. Or wealth, that one is difficult. Because the sparkling, wide-eyed young ones all want all the money and candy, and most especially baby kittens the size of gumdrops that will never grow up. For them, our world is a cotton candy haze, except when you accidentally mention a dead cat who was named Peanut. Then the storm appears on the brow, looms like charred coffee at the depths of a cup. And why shouldn't we give that man bent on the corner money? Because we don't have much money, honey. What's that? A man who drives a very nice car and is just about to hit you. You must remind these little dum-dums. They are very small. No one can see them. Anyone is liable to run them over. No one cares what grade they're in. They must stop touching everything. They can't have cake, popcorn, popsicles, cupcakes for breakfast, lunch, or dinner. It's a limousine, and it represents every stupidity known to man. And you, my child, are never allowed to ride in one. May they one day become obsolete. May spaceships replace them. May you one day cease to force me to answer all of your questions about this awful world again. Though by then I may be dead. And for now, I'll take grabbing your hand in mine while crossing this fearsome parking lot as my one true reason to live. That kid's 16 and was driving. It's terrifying. Terrifying. So. Okay. So. I'm going to read a few new poems, and like 3, okay? This one is called Skims, okay? And that is a brand of lingerie that Kim Kardashian produces, and I happened upon it very late at night when I was like doing that web thing, you know? So, it's sad to see you, Kim Kardashian, in this strange room streamed to my screen, a walk-in wardrobe a family of 10 could live in, a scene I arrive upon with a witless click. You're sharing your new brand of underwear. They make you, you, as if we should care, as if our hearts are for sale, like the shapewear your mind has given birth to. And while I don't care about the boy shorts you'll wear around the house when you're not feeling like wearing lingerie, please, I'm starting to care more about you than I care to admit. Sitting here with you in my mind's midnight, feeling you and intimate. I'm worried about you. If you knew me, would you worry about me too? The more alone I feel, the less real I feel. Except the kind of alone we feel is real, intergalactic, projected into outer space in a pair of underwear without air. We've been had, lured with fantasies of children by husbands who lie. In this cocktail hour of a nowhere zone, we float, alchemized. So this is called Botox. You need Botox, the alarm on my phone sounds. My face winces. It's never liked needles. But what it does or doesn't like is not my concern. It's not my resting bitch face, my face for a long time. My main beef with it has been the snag between its brows, how it alarms others with announcements of disbelief. You can judge me all you like. A problem was solved. If and when he made a particularly stupid remark and my brows rose, his face snapped into a snarl and he shot up the show that if I allowed the expression to again meet the surface of my face, it would surely be quashed, as one might a kitten they're trying to drown in a pond, or trash that needs shoving further down into a bin. My face, the fears it has abound like birds in spring. It's altogether easier to have no expression at all. But my forehead feels it will crash down on my eyes like a weighted window sash. For a long time, I carried my face in a sandwich baggie in my purse, taking it out only to buy groceries. Now I sleep with it on. So, I'm gonna read 2 more poems, okay? So this poem, it's titled Suburban Divorcee, and I think I'm gonna change the title. And, you know, so I was under the impression that like mowing lawns is an extremely difficult thing to do because my former husband would act like he was the worst. So this is about that. and my learning how to mow. I have a rider mower, and it's awesome. So I call it suburban divorcing. Well, I live in the country really, not really a suburb, so. Okay, mowing the lawn, it's revealed, is not the torture it once appeared, as the loved one tore through the yard in heated fury, sluicing beds of flowers bent dangerously toward the sun and the blades. The machine was somehow derelict, excused for its tendency to runnel through precious plantings due to a lapsed brake he could not repair. His face in sun, murderous blank behind the mirrored eye sockets. Worse than a chore, a downright war. To even consider mowing the lawn after seeing the scathing regard of the sun's acids run down his smarting face as he spun the mower around the yard, why, I figured it would be too hard. Now that he's gone, I thought I'd hire someone or forsake the lawn entire, grow it out like a beard. Mike from across the road comes over as usual with his advice, change the oil, the filter, sharpen the blades. Mike doesn't want to open old wounds, but it's been his suspicion the grass wouldn't thrive because my ex lowered the mower's mouth inches above the roots, scraping sun-hot soil in an effort to mow less. It's not exactly interesting, I'll admit. That's why some people drink while mowing, hoist tumblers of wine as they sail their yards. It's strange how I've come to thrive on the rumble of the rider mower, blades lowered, love how it clears rough green into fresh swaths. Flying between apple trees to slash through hairy bridges of weed, I see Mike. I raise my glass. I love Mike. I love him. He's like the neighbor that I got after all the New York neighbors that I endured. I had so many horrible neighbors. I said, they're like, oh, Cate Marvin's moving in. Well, let's get a couple that fights a lot and has a physically abusive relationship and make them live above or below, and have them smoke lots of marijuana. So while you're grading, you're like, asshole. You're like, clarify. It's so ridiculous. Okay. So this is so I'm really excited to hear Nathan. He taught at my college for a while. Yeah. So this is a poem that I wrote right when the pandemic was coming to an end, and I was out of my divorce, and I was literally like, I am never dating anyone again. And then I ended up dating someone who I'm still with, and he took me out on a date, and it was like the greatest thing ever because I hadn't been out for so long. So this poem is called "Tell Me More About Your Mother." Love is a bear rubbing blood out of a hive. It smashed when all it wanted was honey. Love doesn't know what it does, or maybe it does. Motherfucking love. Love is a hot restaurant athrob with venomous waitstaff, in which every item on the menu appears indecipherable. Love is only what it does. Love was always what it doesn't. It didn't. Once it did, then it didn't. It didn't hard. Was a kitchen in the thick. Was a bloom of lilac like a handle. Was a flower like a shovel. Struck hard, and there was blood. Someone hit someone and fell them down to break their back on my favorite coffee table. That wasn't love. That was sniffing around, making do, sleeping with hands snapped at one's sides. That was unlove. Love, when it's love, does. I don't care if the day you unlove me I fall down, break my knees out on the street. That's okay. I'm the bear going after the picnic trash. Inside this room's throb, restaurant is such a weird word, huh? So maybe I get dramatic, maybe make a scene, talk too much, maybe I am obscene, wanting the legs that sit beneath the table across from me, the legs beneath the table, legs against legs. I think you should not think how it will end this time, this story. I think you should not think. Do you get to stretch yourself like a sunset again? Do you cry into the pot of a cactus? There are better things to think. I think you should think the better things and order a drink you do not recognize, love. Now, drink.
Thank you so much, Kate. I just love hearing your work, and it was also great, just honor and privilege to be able to read with you a few weeks ago. Yeah, I just feel like we're siblings in poetry for sure. So our last reader is going to be Nathan McClain. I've known Nathan for quite a few years now, and I had the honor of interviewing him on my podcast, and I remember we were talking about, bread. It's my podcast called Bread and Poetry. We were talking about bread, and I remember he mentioned that his favorite type of bread was the one that his daughter was holding, whatever type of bread that was at the moment. And I remember that just made my whole heart just melt entirely. And now he has 2 daughters, which is so exciting. And I'm just so happy to be writing in the world with Nathan, and yeah, I'm just so honored, and yeah, you're gonna be able to hear his amazing work. Okay, welcome Nathan to the stage.
A big thank you to Diannely for the invitation. Such amazing readings by both Kay and Cate. It's really an honor to be here with you all. Multiple choice. Dull, bulky, previously owned. It was usually tucked in my backpack, next to algebra or earth science, and my gym shorts, U.S. history. Some old scene drawn on the cover. There was a teacher, a classroom member. I was this many years old. There was time, which was set aside every day. I had a locker, a combination. I sat at a distance that softened the edges of white chalk on the board, poor vision. Though even that didn't make me much care to commit the past to memory, except to darken the right bubble on the test sheet. Christopher Columbus discovered America in blank. The Declaration of Independence was first signed by blank. Blank assassinated Abraham Lincoln. Answers were simple and dependable, black and white. You were remembered for better or worse for what you did, what you refused to do. Every year, Rosa Parks sat unmoved. Dr. King dreamed, and I recorded it, as if for the first time. I've heard textbook sometimes used to describe an act as flat and predictable as a stretch of country road. Miles of the same cow lying in cut grass, slowly chewing cud with the effort or patience it might take to grind the difficulty of any fact down. Robert E. Lee surrendered at blank to end the Civil War. At the end, my mother once said, every battle is lost by someone, has its casualties, bronze monuments erected to the story, or some other old scene just as dull and clunky. Until blank, years before I met my wife, I could have been dragged off for simply glancing at her, which I do often, and too long. The moral? Who knows? Maybe, if you're lucky, you outlive the usefulness of such knowledge. Besides, it's a new world. I own the Riverside Shakespeare, 2 biographies of Coleridge, my shelves lined with the past and its usual despairs, its joys as well. Sometimes I look. Sometimes I get swept up in all the looking. There is rain, someone returns home, a letter arrives with the expected news. A cat on the windowsill, asleep. My wife in a rocking chair, quietly reading. Everyone keeps asking when we will finally have a baby, because it's a thing we can choose now. I mean, how lucky is that? It's super scary having kids these days. And I am reminded every day. This next poem is a title poem from my first collection, which is entitled Scale. At the Griffith Observatory, which you mostly like to visit alone, there is a seismograph. And beneath it, a plaque that reads, "When two plates grind against each other, tensions build. Eventually, something has to give." You jump on the seismograph. Its needle, which has scratched in red the weight of everyone who's come before you, doesn't register your weight. There is no one to tell you it's broken. You always wished it to be broken. If this earth is your home, if it's crumbling under you, how saddening to know how little you matter. Not that this is news. There's been a tremendous difference between being living in New York, where I taught with Cate so long ago, and now living in sort of Massachusetts, which is it's a far cry from my experiences in the city, living sort of like what feels very much more like country now. Part of it has to do with having two young children, now having two young children, and trying to find activities to do with them. So I'm just going to read a slightly newer poem, one that's entitled, "Had the Gall to Take My Black Ass Raspberry Picking." Summer still. Summer, and what better to do with children in Western Mass? Plus, my daughter loves raspberries, especially the one inside my wife's elbow, though to pluck it might take all the ingenuity she can muster. So much she has yet to understand. So yes, I went along at least. The raspberry bushes farther off in the field, back by the bigger trees, the owner told us, where shadow seemed to gather, almost as though it had something planned. Clear plastic containers the owner gave us for picking. From possibly 100 years ago, the farm in her family's hands that long, the way so much history is held, kept. How long have they fastened rope to these things, I wondered. You could wear them like a yoke if you needed your hands free. If you want, she said. Don't worry. We'd never let our daughter wear this thing around her neck like some animal. And here is where I should say we didn't wear it either. My wife, me, but we did. I hate to admit it was easier to just wear them while picking the raspberries, but of course it was. Just a couple more poems, and then it'd be great to sit and be in conversation with these wonderful poets. This is a poem that leads off this more recent collection. It's entitled "Boy Pulling a Thorn from His Foot." Small enough to cradle, caught in the act of concentration, You see it, chiseled there. His bronze body curled into a question mark, not pulling, rather about to pull, the thorn finally out. Nothing original here, nothing new. Marble, quartz, the old masters have, for ages now, sculpted this scene. You've seen it, and here you are, looking. Again, the little boy. Again, his insistent grief. So what? Some exhibits in the museum have already gone dark. So what? Others have moved on to new rooms, left you comfortless with your notepad and pen. And what have you learned from standing here so long examining pain, no matter how ancient? What good has it done you? The thorn thrumming still. He almost has it now. So close. Step back, the guard warns. His one job, to enforce the distance necessary, which might be called perspective, though not yet. And I think similarly to Cate, I want to close with a poem that's in many ways thinking about love, which I think it will be important for us to continue to remember day in and day out, and to be really proactive about. So thank you all again for listening. This is Love Elegy in the Chinese Garden with Coy. Near the entrance, a patch of tall grass. Near the tall grass, long-stemmed plants, each bending an ear-shaped cone to the pond's surface. If you looked closely, you could make out silvery koi swishing toward the clouded pond's edge, where a boy tugs at his mother's shirt for a quarter to buy fish feed. And watching that boy as he knelt down to let the koi kiss his palms, I missed what it was to be so dumb as those koi. I like to think they're pure, but that's why, even after the boy's palms were empty, after he had nothing else to give, they still kissed his hands. Because who hasn't done that? Loved something so intently, even after everything is gone. Loved something that has washed its hands of you. I like to think I'm different now, that I'm enlightened somehow. But who am I kidding? I know I'm like those koi still, with their popping mouths that would kiss those hands again if given the chance. So dumb. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Nathan. And I'm just looking at my page now, and I'm realizing I never read Nathan's bio. I just got so caught up in talking about his baby and bread. So I'm going to take a moment to do that now. So Nathan McClain is the author of 2 collections of poetry, previously owned 4-Way Books 2022, longlisted for the Massachusetts Book Award, and Scale 4-Way Books 2017. He is a recipient of fellowships from the Crossplace, the Sewanee Writers Conference, and Red Bow Writers Conference, and is a Cave Canem Fellow. He earned an MFA from Warren Wilson College. His poems and prose have appeared in Plume Poetry 10, The Common, Guest House, Poetry Northwest, Buffalo Public, Square, among others. He teaches at Hampshire College and serves as poetry editor of the Massachusetts Review. I would love to give these poets another round of applause for their amazing work. So I think we have about 10 minutes or so, and I wanted to ask these poets some questions, and then open it up to folks if they have any questions for our poets. And I guess one question that I was really curious about was, what are some of the challenges and joys of writing poetry during this present moment? Nathan, you mentioned joys and despairs, and I'm curious about what those are for you, those challenges, but also those joys, because we don't want to forget joy in the middle of these challenges. So I would love to ask you those questions.
I would certainly say for myself, the challenges of writing poems, I think at any time are going to be very much the same. Just the amount of, especially now that I have young children, it's mostly about making sure that I'm working writing into my schedule in life in some ways. I've been really surprised and amazed and delighted that I think it was bound to happen, but that my kids are showing up a lot more in my poems. There seems to be a lot of that constellation of that seems to be happening around the work. But I would also say that, at least for myself, especially being a Black person in this country, that just the nation's history makes it very difficult. The nation's history and its more recent past makes it difficult to write as well, because I find that part of that work, part of my work ends up being sort of having to sort of translate some of that history, not only for myself but also for my readers. And I found that it's not something that I'm ever seeking to do, but it is something that the work is constantly encountering, and that I think can be just from the perspective of just being kind to oneself and being kind to one's own mind is having to contend with some of the historical challenges and how those things get filtered in through our writing.
I would say that I too have been having that problem, because I think that we need to process a little bit faster now, and I would ideally like to sit around and just think about stuff. But I've had to do a really quick turnaround, because I have a 16-year-old who's trans, non-binary, and I've known since they were 11. And so I have, the issue of having to confront myself and my own assumptions of the way I use language, which was totally gendered. I mean, when I read some of those poems I read, I was like, what are you even talking about? That there's just boys and girls in this high school. So now I think a lot differently about these things, and I'm finding that I often will avoid writing about it, because I know that there is something that's going to be really challenging about it. And of course that has to do with just facing something that's really scary, which is the potential harm to my child. So, and they're a badass in all my poems. I made a point of transitioning them in the last poem of my last book. And so now I want to write about, okay, I need to write about parenting a trans kid. And I wrote a poem in my writing group. My boyfriend was like, this is great. And I was like, yes. And then my writing group was like, ugh. So I have to go back in. But they gave me some good ideas for doing it in a way that makes a lot of sense for the speaker of my poems. Because the speaker of my poems is not necessarily me. So I'm me living my life with my kid. And also I don't want to think about it sometimes. It just hurts too much. So I think that part of the job of the writer is actually to feel all that stuff. That's why it sucks, okay? Is that you have to experience it and then somehow make sense of it and create something that will help the reader experience it in a way that is maybe cathartic for them or feels like a connection. And so that's something I just have to do right now. But I hardly ever have time. So.
Oh, that's so important. I guess my answer is not an answer, just where I am right now. I mean, when I wrote these poems, I didn't think anyone would see them. I was just trying to pass my PhD dissertation. Now my life is very different, and I'm in a different place emotionally than when I wrote them. And I'm writing right now. I think it's just a collection of essays. I think it's probably a memoir in essays, and I think it's about becoming real. And it's, I don't know, it's kind of bewildering to be in this healing place, or this place in which I can witness my own healing and be present for a transformation, and that transformation has been really just being able to access a self at all. Like I can have a self. Like I've been telling my friends, like, you know, like when they visit, like the last friend that visited me in the car, like that's all they heard was like, Jordan, I have a self. You know? And it's wild to have this, you know, be present for that while, you know, institutions around me are crumbling, and while I'm also in a lot of grief around that, and there's new grief I'm experiencing too. So yeah, I don't know. You know, I worry that I've lost my edge. You know, now that I can handle life so much better than I did when I was writing these. But I don't know. I'm also, I would rather not suffer. You know, I'd rather just write from a place of calm curiosity and this seeking of bewilderment rather than, you know, just desperation and obsession. Like, yeah.
It's like negative capability, right?
Yes.
Yeah. What's the next question?
So we only have a few more minutes, and I want to give an audience member an opportunity to ask a question. You have the unique privilege of being able to ask these three poets a question, if there are any out there. Or if not, I'll ask them another question. Yes, Dennis.
We just started filling the room up with some younger poets in here from high school. I'm wondering what kind of advice your poets might have for them in the earlier stages of their writing lives.
Absolutely. So what advice might you have for some poets that are in their early stages of their writing life?
Probably the best advice, or among the best pieces of advice that you'll get from any writer is challenging you to read, and to read very widely, to read broadly, and not only to read, but also I would encourage you, especially when you find writers that you like, to begin, like when you're starting out, begin by emulating the writers that you like, and begin by read their sentences, read how they utilize punctuation and how they structure their syntax. And I think there's so much that you can learn by emulating other writers as you are working through the sort of process of discovering what it is that you feel like you sound like. So reading and emulating other writers, I think, is really a great start.
I want to second that, but I think you can also just I think of it as like cross-training and sort of like also nutrition. So I don't think you always have to pay attention to everything you're reading. That helps. But I think if you're constantly reading like literature or short stories or not like easy stuff, you're going to be just taking that all in, and you're going to automatically be learning from it just by like seeing the patterns. So I think and then I think also letter writing is a really great way to hone your skill, and because that has a very specific audience. But I think also that writing is very hard. It can be very scary and very intimidating. So I have two pieces of advice for you, which I've been really hanging on to. This is like what I remind myself, which is you can start anywhere. It doesn't matter. Just start anywhere. You don't have to be inspired. Like inspiration's bullshit. Like just make a practice of it. And it doesn't matter where you start. Just start anywhere. And then my other piece of advice is that when you're receiving feedback or criticism, be mindful of who is giving it to you. Because some people might, if someone doesn't like a poem, that might actually be a good thing, right? Because some people, they get offended by some things. Oh, well, this makes me uncomfortable. Or some people don't know what they're talking about. So, so don't let someone like stop you just because they decided that they don't like something, or your writing changed, or is that me in the poem? That all that bullshit. And so choose your readers carefully.
Yeah, I think I agree with both of the things just said. I would also add, despite the discomfort of being present in one's body, just try to be as present as you can to your external experience and your internal experience. I think Silicon Valley has taken a lot of that from us, and we don't have to let it, And I think Cate's poem about Kim Kardashian is one example of someone who was online, but also very present with her experience online. Like, it takes a lot of presence and attention to even stop and think, this could be a great poem, you know? Does that make sense? So I would say maybe detox and then come back to your, you know, to the high dopamine yielding parts of your phone.
You know, and one of the really fun things about being a writer of any sort, artist, is that you can take yourself out on little excursions and like just be like, I'm going to go to the museum today and just write down everything. I'm going to go like, you know, do this thing, and it'll be part of writing even if I'm not writing.
And lastly, just said, like, I love what you said about inspiration, Kate, that, like, you know, like inspiration is always something that you really only recognize, after it's already happened. Like, if you're in the midst of writing something and you're already thinking about, like, oh, this is going to be, like, so good, then you're already thinking about the fact that somebody else is going to read it, and you've then, like, lost your ability to be present in the work that you're doing. And so, you know, thinking of, you know, inspiration is one of those, like, you never know that you've, like, had a really good dream or a really, like, interesting dream until you've woken up. And so I think inspiration sort of works in a similar way.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Can we give these writers another round of applause? So there are books in the back of the table being sold by Water Street Books. So please buy their books. They're here if you would like them to sign them. And stick around for some teen poetry. All right. Thank you so much.